Welcome, welcome, welcome to Black Men's Health. Today, we are honored to be joined by Darrick D. McGhee to talk about Black men, family, and purpose, two of the most critical aspects of our lives as men on this planet, family and purpose. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to introduce to you Elder Darrick McGhee, Sr. He's known as a highly skilled, well-trained, and motivated leader. He has extensive experience in public service and a strong background in legislative initiatives on a state level. Darrick is a tri-vocational leader. He is the founder and president of Strategic Inflection Point LLC, a full-service professional development company. He is also an active registered lobbyist with the state of Florida, currently serving as a chief operating officer for Johnson and Blanton LLC. In addition to that as well, he has 2 decades of preaching ministry experience and is the founding pastor of Bible-based church in Tallahassee, Florida, where he resides with his wife and 2 children. Today, we are honored to be joined by Elder Darrick D. McGhee.
Thank you, my friend. Brothers, it's an honor, man. It's an honor. It really is.
Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Always an honor to be around you, man. Thank you.
Good brother. Good brother. Yeah, man. As I said, Pastor McGhee and I have had a couple of discussions on Black Men's Health. So we are so grateful for your time and attention, brother. We know how many responsibilities you have and the flock that you lead and the other work that you're doing in the world. So we are grateful for your time, brother, and look forward to this discussion.
Let's do it, man.
It's gonna be a little bit. It's gonna be a little bit different today. Now, Takuma's driving. He's so much more organized than me. So
I understand.
Go ahead, brother.
So we were talking before we started, and one of the things in learning about you, Darrick, is your journey as a child from Peoria, Illinois, to LA, that transition. And so as an icebreaker to start off, what was it like to go from, a small Midwestern city like Peoria, Illinois, to one of the biggest cities in the United States in LA? What was that like for you?
It was overwhelming, undesirable, frustrating. And I mean by that is because I was really young. My dad had an uncle, a great uncle. My dad's uncle owned his own construction company in Los Angeles, and I lured my dad there to come work for him. And so my mom, after our school year was up, my mom moved us in the summer up there against all of our family. Both my paternal and maternal family all lived in Peoria. We left everything behind and moved to Los Angeles. And I was too young to have an opinion, meaning that I wanted to stay behind with my grandparents, and got to Los Angeles, man. In Peoria, we all knew each other. Every Sunday, my grandmother cooked a big family dinner, went to church together, and then came home to their house on Sundays. But then that was our Sunday routine. I looked forward to it. And all of that changed when we moved to Los Angeles. Moved there with no family, no friends, no foreknowledge. And you go from this small city to this big, humongous city where you have no foreknowledge. And also, we're gang novices, right? So we had no appreciation of the gang culture, had no appreciation of just city life. I would deem Peoria to be way more of a Midwestern country town than anything else. And so just had no appreciation for it all. Just very scary and challenging. And, everything about California, it's fast, culture is different. I didn't have an appreciation for it. I would later grow into loving it, man, but it was when I say undesirable, there was no desire for me to leave Peoria, Illinois, and my family there. I'm a huge grandfather's grandson. Grandfather and I were very, very close. And so to me, my whole world shattered. I had to leave my grandfather. Just could not fathom that at all. And so, yeah, man. Yeah. Everybody sees California different. It's the place for me to go visit, but man, trying to adjust, man, that was hard. That was hard.
It's a lot going on in California.
A lot going on, brother.
I always say I have to change my mindset when I fly into LAX. right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed, Derek, but you know, what was that? My sophomore year, I guess the summer of my sophomore year, I went out to Pasadena, and when I flew and hit the ground in LAX, man, you just gotta
Everything
switch
changes.
your mindset. Yes,
Everything
there's
changes.
so much going on.
Yep.
So I have to always, even if you get a car and hit the interstate, well, if you hit the, you know, the 110 or something of that nature, you gotta,
Yeah.
I am not in Florida, or I'm not in Atlanta.
Yeah. You have no friends on the highway, man. You better get in where you fit in.
That's the first time I saw several lanes of traffic following ambulances. That's the first time in the LA traffic that I saw that. It's like, oh, this is what we're doing. Like, everybody is going to get behind the ambulance. So.
Yeah, man.
Wow. Well, you alluded to this, and this is actually a natural segue because we wanted to
Okay.
talk about the influence of family, particularly your grandfather, your
Yes, sir.
grandparents. Can you talk about the ways in which they impacted you?
Yeah, man. So my mom was one of 9 children. And my grandparents kind of had their children, I would say, really in phases. They're older kids, and then my Aunt Joyce and my mom had like a 7-year gap between the two of them. Then my mom and my Uncle Winston were like 11 months apart. And then after Uncle Winston, there was a gap before my Aunt Vanessa came, which was probably about a 5-year gap. And so they really had their kids in gaps. And my mom was the older sibling of the latter children. And so as a result of that, my grandparents were older, not old, but older when my mom had my brother and I. And so I had the pleasure of actually seeing my grandparents as an older generation. My grandfather was retired, and so he had way more time, as was my grandmother. And so when I saw my grandfather's grandson, man, everything about my grandfather I loved. He was the model example for me of a man, right? He had all his children from one woman. He was a presence in the house. Yeah, he had his struggle and had his vices, but everything about him mattered to me. And he, well, would allow me to play in his hair, would follow him around the house, did all those type of things, man. Like he just was he was, you know, north of 6 feet, and just everything about him. But also, man, you know, he instilled in me the pride of being a McGhee, right? That last name means something. And he, you know, passed down that history. For a while, I was the youngest male grandchild for a period of time. And so because I was the youngest, my brother and my other cousins did not want me to hang around him. So I got with my grandfather a lot and my grandmother. And man, just being around him, seeing just the respect he had in the community, seeing how people stood up straight when he entered a room, all those type of things. Just the respect that he commanded, and not by way of just, you know, abuse, just by way of people just disrespected who he was. And the McGhee name in Peoria has major weight, and that's all because of who my grandparents were. And so, you know, my mom, for the most part, raised my brother and I by herself. I've always known who my dad was. My dad and I are very close now, but growing up, so my grandfather played an active role in helping us become really young men. My grandfather, lovingly, was the first person to actually publicly say I was going to be a preacher. And he said at a time when I was a bad child, right? I was horrible, evil, horrible, mouthy, all those type of things. And he said, you're going to be a preacher. Your brother's going to be somewhere in the education arena. And God's provision, that's what we are doing right now. But man, everything about early McGhee Sr. to this day, I still talk about my grandfather in some of my sermons on Sunday mornings. I mean, he just a model for me, man. And so I always wonder if the man I am today, if he's pleased, right? Because I strived to implement what he was passing down. And man, it's just and my grandmother's, of course, absolutely the same, just awesome woman. But my grandfather, man, was just that guy to me. And you know, just everywhere I go, man, I carry the McGhee name with great pride. And I try to make sure that I don't bring any embarrassment to that last name because of how it was passed down to me and what it means. And, you know, I'm trying to cement this name in our community the way the name was cemented in Peoria. When you said you were a McGhee, favor came with that, but also correction, right? People would say, now, you know, your grandfather don't play that. Because that name was so prominent when you were a McGhee, they expected certain outcomes from your behavior. And I'm grateful, man. I am grateful for that man and for my grandmother. My grandmother was our spiritual matriarch. Like, she was the one who instilled church attendance, and she was on everybody's ministry at church. And Tenora was the lover. She believed in family meals. Everything was going to be a home cooked meal. We're going to convene together. She's going to feed the whole community with her limited resources. She taught me faith in action, right? They lived on a fixed income, but every Sunday, she had enough food to feed our family and the neighborhood. And so just family, man. I was raised where the McGhees are a big family, but we all got together. And so to this day, I'm all about big family gatherings on holidays because of what was instilled in me. And I'm trying to teach that to my children as well, because no matter where you go, family's gonna always matter.
So Darrick, he was calling you a preacher when you were not
Brother.
acting like a preacher?
Not acting like Christ at all, brother. Not at all.
Hey, even Christ had to turn over some tables every now and then. So maybe he was
Exactly.
maybe he was just, maybe he saw it in you, in your
Yeah.
defiance. Maybe he saw it in you. That's good.
He saw something.
So, wow. And, being in LA and away from that, what was interesting is that, at one point you became a student body president. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you talk about your academic journey in LA and how it led to that?
Yeah. I would love that, man. Thank you for that. So I was student body president my senior year in high school. I went to Grover Cleveland Magnet School, which was in Reseda, California. So I was, it was California's version of school choice, where we got bused to school, like a 2-hour drive to school and 2-hour ride home. Because all the inner city schools that I was zoned for were like overly gang infested. And there was no bus, no school bus that would transport you. So I either had to walk through multiple gang neighborhoods, take the city bus. And my mom just was like, no. So middle school and high school, my brother and I both got bused to school. And I had no aspirations for student government whatsoever. I benefited my freshman year in high school. My brother was a senior. So I was, unlike other freshmen, I was very popular as a freshman because my brother was very popular. And so I was always known as Carlos's little brother. And so I got access to a lot of things and really had a great freshman year. And then come my sophomore year, my brother's gone. And so now I'm having to put out my old stakes in the ground. And my brother and I have always been very academically astute. And part of that really has been, we didn't come from money. I've never come from, our money families wasn't like that financially. So my mom always emphasized academics, right? Reading books, which I'm a lover of books today. We maximize our summers, things of that nature. So I knew if I was gonna go to college, I was gonna go to college more likely off my academics. So I took my books very seriously. And also because I knew I wanted to leave Los Angeles for school. I knew the schools I wanted to apply to was gonna require me to carry a certain GPA and test scores and things of that nature. And so I accidentally got into student government. Really, the person who was running it kind of encouraged me to come and volunteer to be a part of a meeting, which I did. And so I ended up being a part of it in my junior year, really more of doing like the sports reporting for those guys, just loosely. And then my classmates really were the ones who pushed me to consider student body president. And I entertained it. And I was very popular in high school, thankfully for that. And so I applied. Actually, I put my name in the run, and somebody else was considering running, and she got wind of it and she bowed out. And so I ran unopposed for student body president for 95, 96 was my senior year. I am the second Black in the history of the school at that time. I was the second Black to become student body president of our school. And the funny thing about it is, once I won, I then had to figure out, what do I actually do with this, right? Because I really ran because my classmates encouraged me more than me having the desire to do it. But that year, student body president, that's how I met Dr. Frederick Humphrey. That's how I ended up at FAMU, right? I was student body president and able to travel throughout our school district and do a lot of great things. Really was the mouthpiece for the student body on campus. Again, I was nominated as most popular in school. And so I was friends with everybody, every culture, every race, every group of people, from your Gothic dressing students all the way down. I was friends with everybody, and so I was always trying to represent the student body as well as possible. And really not even with college as a reason for doing it. It's just more of a, I enjoyed a great freshman year. I saw the pride that the student body had when I was a freshman, and so I felt an obligation in that regard. And that began my journey of really leadership, right? Really trying to be the mouthpiece and being a servant leader in that regard. And so as a result of doing that well, I got inducted into 100 Black Men. I was National Honor Society, and I went to 100 Black Men dinner one night as an awardee, and sitting at a table, man, with my mom, waiting on the banquet to start. This tall man comes to my table, and he starts engaging us in conversation. And I have no idea who this guy is. And he started asking me what school I was going to. And honestly, my dream school was Morehouse, because that's where Dr. King went. I'm a big Dr. King fanatic. I wanted to go to Morehouse. And I have a cousin who lived in Atlanta. And so I wanted to go to Morehouse. And I was waiting on Morehouse. I had applied to almost every HBCU. I got into a lot of local schools. My dream school locally was USC. I got into USC. I just couldn't afford to go. Waiting on Morehouse. And Morehouse could take a long day. And he said, what school? And I said, I'm going to Morehouse. Wait on Morehouse. And he went inside of his suit jacket, brought an envelope and said, okay, Morehouse, do this. And wow. And that was my journey to Tallahassee. When I tell you, I moved here with no family here, no family, no friends. None of my classmates came here. One thing I knew about Tallahassee was in 1993, my freshman year, they won a championship with Charlie Ward. That's the only thing I know about Tallahassee. And I remember Cole wore a FAMU sweatshirt on a Martin episode. Those are my two things about Tallahassee. But brother, all of that all happened because I was student body president in high school. And because of that, I got exposed to rooms and people because of my leadership role. And my journey came south as a result of, man, but it was representing a student body. And Cleveland's, my senior class was a huge class, right? Representing that population of people and being their voice and being their mouthpiece was laborious, but it was one of my greatest joys, because my classmates made it known regularly that they knew I would represent them well. And so I always had their vote of confidence, which was an awesome thing. And to think that, I was going to school with kids, man, who were from multi-million-dollar families, and I was nowhere near that. And I was representing a melting pot of social economic statuses. And only God knew that was setting me up for something greater.
And that's such a good synopsis of just how we see these influences help mold you, to help, set you up for your purpose.
Yeah.
You being identified as someone who might be a preacher someday, somehow ending up, running for student body president and winning unopposed.
Yeah.
And so that begs the question, because we're talking about today, Black men and purpose and family. When did when did you start to become informed about your purpose? When did that begin to crystallize for you? And if you will, can you share how your purpose came about for you?
Absolutely. So the truth of the matter is, ministry was never something I foresaw. I know what my grandfather said, but I never foresaw it. I'm the youngest of two boys, been in church my entire life. So when I got to FAMU, my honest mindset was to go away from the church, because I was raised in church. This was my first time ever being away from home. I'm going to maximize my college experience. And I always say to people at my church, if you keep your children in a setting where the word is being preached, eventually what's hovering over them will get inside of them. I'm a model example of that. Even when I try to go away from church attendance, I was being drawn back in because it was in me. And so my pursuit, honestly, was law school. My major of political science was to take me to law school. That was my desire. That was my plan. And for one reason, though, let's keep it factual, law school really was because my senior year in high school, I remember being in AP English when they announced the verdict of the O.J. Simpson trial. And leading up to that, man, I just fell in love with Johnny Cochran. I love his tailor-made suits. I love his vocabulary. I loved how he commanded the room when he spoke. I loved his handling of the law, but I also knew all that equated to a lot of money, right? So for me, it was less about the practice of law. It was more about everything else that came with it. And so I came to FAMU to pursue political science with the intent of going off to law school thereafter. I was in Hatchet Pre-Law Society, all those things, the plan of going to law school. And did that my freshman and sophomore year. And between my sophomore and junior year, I really felt God was dealing with me. Dealing with me majorly. And I accepted my calling into ministry into my sophomore year. And that shifted my whole mindset, right? Law school was no longer a desire of mine. Really pursuing ministry became a desire of mine. And I ran from that call for a long time because I didn't know anybody who was a college student and also a licensed minister. And so I ran from accepting the call to ministry. And also, I felt like it was going to destroy my entire college experience, man. I wanted to enjoy everything. When I got to FAMU, true story, the ratio was 8 girls to 1 guy, right? And I'm like, I'm about to enjoy all eight of mine. Like, I've never seen as many Black people in one place, all these Black beautiful women. I'm about to enjoy all this. That was my intention. And, you know, it's the purpose of God for my life was such where even when I tried to go opposite of what I felt like I was supposed to be doing, I always got drawn back in. And so for me, what happened was it was somewhere between sophomore and junior year in college where I really felt a tug of war happening in my life. Because at that point, I really was living my life spiritually off of what my grandmother had taught us and my mom had taught me, but not really my own personal walk with the Lord. And as well as I was struggling with my identity, meaning I was doing everything for everybody else, right? I never really thought about my life and what I wanted to be and things of that nature. I started having this tug of war during that summer where I started really feeling like God is telling me to do something. And I started just saying, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. I got into a major car accident and 3 of us were going to play basketball. Our car got, my roommate's car got T-boned. And I ended up in the hospital with a brace on my neck. Doctor said 3 inches to the left, I would have been paralyzed. Glass in my eye, glass in my lip, chipped a piece of my spine. And the week after the accident was FAMU spring break. And so my roommates all had gone home for spring break because I was confined to the bed. I had to stay in Tallahassee. And only way I can get comfortable when I lay in the bed is if I laid on my back looking up. And so it was almost like God had prostrated me. And it was in that period of time where I really had to just start having a internal battle with myself of who am I, what do I want to be, things of that nature, man. And that began my journey of self-discovery, but also with really loving who I was and accepting this. And I knew ministry was a call upon my life. And I finally said yes to God in that place, in that stead, in that physical condition. I say yes to God. And, you know, I finished school, of course, and I got licensed while I was still in college. And, you know, the Lord has done great and mighty things. But I will tell you, and this is important for me to share to the listening audience, up until that point, a little after that point as well, everything I was doing was for the appeasing of everybody else, right? It was to make sure my family was happy and friends were happy. And I was not important at all. And so purpose to me was making sure that I gave my all to everybody else. And I'll worry about everything else later. And God really started dealing with me, man, in a major way. And it was a scary battle because not only was he doing this, I was in a foreign land. As I aforementioned, I have no family. I had no family here. And so I couldn't even run to anybody for help. I literally had to depend solely on the Lord. And my grandmother had taught us, my mom as well when I was growing up, about reading your Bible. And I really wasn't a Bible reader like that, man. So I just started reading a proverb a day. So I read a proverb a day, just started just eating the word of God like that. And that really began to be my journey. And I will tell anybody, God has blessed me in so many ways, man. At the end of the day, whether I'm an entrepreneur, whether I'm a lobbyist, a father, a husband, so on and so forth, all of that is possible because of the summer between sophomore and junior year. and me fully surrendering to God's purpose for my life. And as a result, God began to start putting things in place for me.
Wow. Wow.
Wow is right.
Wow.
God might have been keeping you away from spring break, brother.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely correct, man. And I had plans to do some damage, right? Just because, you know, I felt like I have time. Once I graduate from college, I'll get serious about life. For now, let me maximize all this. And it just never, I was that dude. When I would show up to a party, I always stood out. And I'd be like, D, why are you here, man? Like, man, we can't have no fun because you're around. And I wasn't like no superly spiritual guy like that. I just didn't fit in with what my friends said. They said, man, listen, brother, we can tell there's something great about your life. These would be my friends saying this. They were seeing in me things I didn't see in myself. I also battled with low self-esteem. And so as a result of that too, go ahead.
I was about to say, obviously your folks in high school also.
Yeah, man, they did, man.
You're making your granddaddy proud in the sense of if they were seeing something in you for leadership and you were referencing that the other individual that was running bowed out, they obviously, you know, saw something that was special.
And John, let me say something about that. I think that's key. This was one of my high school and college struggles, right? It's when people see greatness in you that you don't see in yourself. When people see the purpose and the value of your life and you don't see it in yourself. I must be honest with your listening audience that at the point when I'm being thrust into some major spots, I was in a season of contemplating suicide because I grew up in an abusive household. And so although I had left home, you know, I learned that distance does not equate to deliverance, right? And so I'm all the way in Tallahassee dealing with some childhood trauma experiences. And when it seems like to the outside world, Darrick is doing great, I was at night, man, praying that the Lord help me kill myself because I just couldn't, I was struggling. And so when I mentioned about low self-esteem, I just could not see what everybody else was seeing. People were saying, man, Darrick, you're gonna do great things in life. I couldn't see that because to me, life was so miserable. That the thought of you know, even seeing the worldly level of success was just hard to grasp. And being a Black man, you know, and growing up around uncles who didn't permit you to show any emotions, that became even a greater struggle for me because I couldn't divulge to anybody, man, I'm dealing with this. And so I was in a silent battle. To the outside person, I'm doing great things, but within myself, man, I'm defeated on a regular basis. I'm having a hard time just really focusing. Life is not worth living was kind of what I would say to people, man. And so we talked about purpose, man. For me, that summer was my strategic inflection point. That's what my company's name after that. It really was my place where I couldn't go left and I couldn't go. I had to make a decision in that season of my life. And that decision was going to change the trajectory of my life, man. And thank the Lord. He loved on me in that season, man, really helped me get through that and really started letting me see myself for who I was, flaws and all, and really started getting a greater grasp and appreciation of who I was. And it's possible, man, to love yourself and not like yourself. And at one point in my life, I didn't love or like me. And then one season I loved me, but I didn't like me. And then God helped me get to the point where I started loving and liking me, to where now how I carried myself was a genuine, sincere way of doing it. It wasn't just for the surface. And that really mattered, man. That really mattered.
That's powerful.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, brother.
You know, as you're talking, it just occurred to me that some of the most effective leaders that we have are people who've been through it all. Yep. They've been through the muck, the mire.
Yes, sir.
They have a breadth of experience that's uncommon. And when you're talking, that's what I'm hearing. Someone who's been exposed to a lot, been in a lot of situations, but that experience has proven instructive in how you guide and lead people. Um, and so my question to you is, based on all of your experiences, what do you think their challenges in terms of purpose, in terms of family, as we're opening up this conversation
Yes, sir.
to the state of the world?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, um, what are the challenges that currently face us as Black men in the realm of family, in the realm of purpose, in the realm of spirit?
So I think one of the greatest challenges that we as Black men experience is the lack of appreciation. Here's what I mean by that. I aforementioned about my grandfather, how to this day I still hold him in high regard. There was never a moment in my childhood around my grandparents where I questioned who was the authoritative voice in the house, where I questioned his presence. There's never a time when my grandfather was absent from that role. As our world has evolved and grown, let's say for the Black community, the Black man has been seen less and less, but also has been treated less and less. And as a result, you have young brothers who are struggling to find out who they are. And at the same point, you have men who there are a lot of brothers, Black men, who are on the job training. My dad was that example, whom I love today. My father was learning how to be a father as he was being a father, right? Because he didn't have the model. And so there are men who get labeled in the negative in a major way because people say they were horrible fathers. But when you investigate their lives, they basically were exemplifying what they saw growing up. T.D. Jakes wrote a book years ago called Emotions. And in Emotions talked about, the emotions of a man. There was one chapter dealing called Finding the Fathers. And he posed a question in that chapter that really became the bridge that created reconciliation between my father and I. Where he asked the question of, have you ever thought your father is the model? Have you ever thought your father is the father he saw growing up? I don't know anything about my paternal grandfather. And so I later learned from my dad and his story what he had dealt with growing up. But the point of that is I didn't have, it's hard to appreciate who somebody is today unless you know what they've had to overcome in life. So we look at it from a purpose perspective. Our Black people in general have had to overcome a lot, right? In general. Then you add on to a Black man. Imagine in the time of the heightened level of slavery, if you watch a slave master not only auction off your family, but they kept you together. There were times when your wife was raped knowingly by the slave master, that you could do about it. Like, you're watching this. You're watching them castrate you as a man. You're watching these things play out. I have always been a vocal advocate for a woman being able to write her own ticket. I have no problem with women being independent, but I'm a believer of scripture, right? Scripture says the oil flows from the head down, right? The man's presence matters. And as a father of a 16-year-old son, if I ever question the value of me as a father to a young man, I see it every day with my son, because my son is preparing for this world I know about. And so I talk to him openly about what it looks like. To some people, I have two strikes against me. I'm Black and I'm male to some people. And so in some cases, I'm starting out already behind the 8 ball. In a lot of my business meetings, I may be the only Black in the room, right? Yep. And so I understand that. But my grandfather taught his grandsons growing up that man doesn't have a foot big enough to hold you down. And so it wasn't teaching you to be conceited and arrogant. It was more of a teaching you confidence. And so for our men, for Black men today, because we've never been taught how to express how we feel in a healthy way, we deal with a lot of internal battles amongst ourselves, within ourselves, because men do cry. We do cry. We just don't let people see us cry because somehow that's equated to weakness, right? Sometimes men are very hard and brash with their children because that's how we were raised. And so for us, it's challenging as Black men because, you know, the world that we're in some contexts have done all it can to rob you and take from you your manhood, right? Your manhood. And as a result of that, when you finally see a Black man actively engaged in his kids' lives, showing up to his kids' PTA meetings, his kids' sports outings, you hear those kids on an interview say, "I want to thank my dad." When you hear those type of things, it's more of a shock wave for people, right? Because to them, it's a foreign concept. The fact of the matter is there are a lot of Black men who are actively engaged, whether they are married to or not married to the child's mother. They're still active in their kids' lives. But for me, with my struggle, with dealing with purpose, man, it was the scariest moment of my life was when my wife had her ultrasound when she was pregnant with our son, and we were told we were having a son. That was the scariest moment of my life, probably, because generationally, you know, I had men in my family who had wives and girlfriends at the same time. And so the thought of being a father of a son scared me because I was afraid of ruining this young boy's life. And that was a scary moment for me. And so I think about brothers I talk to now, men in my church, men and I deal with in conversations. A lot of brothers, man, are dealing with the silent killer, right? And there are triggers that brothers really struggle with in a major way. And so there are some men, man, who are angry, who've never been told in their adulthood, never been told entirely in their life, they're loved, they're proud of, they don't know who they are, they've never been told their identity, they've never had a man lay their hands on them and speak into their lives. Those things matter. Quickly, let me say this scripturally, that Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob stole the blessing from Esau. When Jacob laid hands and anointed, when Isaac anointed Jacob, when Esau came into the house to prepare to feed his father said, "Who are you?" He said, I'm Esau. He said, "I just blessed you." If you read that text closely, 5 different times, Esau begs Isaac to bless him. To the last point, he said, "Are you telling me you have no more blessings to give?" The Bible says that Esau cried out to his father, "Please bless me." The truth of the matter is, brothers, Esau's cry gets ignored when you preach and teach that text. We always talk about Jacob, but Esau is an example of a lot of men today who are crying for to be blessed, to be affirmed by their father, and never receive that. And so now they're now fathers, and because they never had it given to them, they don't know how to give it to the next generation. And it's hard for them. And so they put we call our stock in our jobs and our titles and our positions. That's what we were told. You could be successful in the professional arena and still be struggling personally because you don't know who you are. And that's why you look at Black men from a health perspective, there's certain killers of Black men, right? That we just ignore, we don't take seriously and things of that nature. But Esau, to me, is a resounding voice where he's begging his father to do that. And as a result, if you read the rest of the Bible, you see what's happening between Jacob and Esau, between Israel, and so on and so forth, man. And it goes back to a root cause, right? There's a point in that place where you have to really think about it from that standpoint. And so for me, as a Black man, I made it my life's purpose that I am unapologetic about being transparent. I openly share my life story, my life journey, the trauma that I dealt with growing up, not to embarrass my family, but I know in that setting that I'm in, when I'm sharing that, there are people in that room who are struggling with that same exact thing and have never been given permission to verbalize that. And so I am an overcomer, and I have a responsibility, right? And everything that I've been blessed to do in my life, man, God has been gracious, God has been kind. And people will meet you in your now and never have an appreciation for your then, right? Yep. Well, who I am today didn't start today. Like I had to overcome a lot and deal with a lot. And in my next will be greater than my now, but I can't get to either one of them if I don't deal with my then. And some
Mm.
people weren't there when you came out of your struggles and situations. So people who know me now in business, when they hear me tell my life story, a lot of them are like overwhelmed with hearing it because
Yep.
they know you now. They know you now
I
buttoned
was.
up. Exactly. They know you now buttoned up. They have no idea. So I was sharing with you off camera, Takuma, I'm a first generation college attendee on my dad's side of the family, male or female, right? And so, I was the third one on the McGhee side to go to college. Many others have gone since then. And so, I didn't come from a family where or history, man, where we were big business owners, nothing like that. But what I came with, I had to instill pride of name, and everything else came as a result of, man. But it's hard. And the last thing I'll say about us as Black men that we struggle with in today's purpose is trust, right? We don't trust easily, and as a result, a lot of times we deal with things ourselves, our way, because I dare not allow you to know that I'm struggling, that I have a weakness, and I'm definitely not going to give you the power to use it against me. And so I almost tug of war within myself, trying to evolve to a place that I probably never get to because everybody that I've trusted in my life have done me wrong. And so I'm not giving nobody else any more power over that. And there are some brothers, man, that I know right now who deal with that now. They're married dealing with that because they've been burned so many times and hurt so many times. And, and growing up in some context, you get stars for the amount of women you done slept with, how many kids you have. And nobody is appreciating like they should for you staying and you being active and you being engaged. And for all those who are listening, purpose is way beyond a position on a job and a title on a job. Those things are extensions of, they're not the main purpose and the main goal of. My purpose in life is to be a beacon of hope for all those I come in contact with, right? To be an extension of the Lord I believe in, and be a blessing to people and important to people's lives on a regular basis. And that's regardless of what position I may or may not hold, regardless of how much money I make on the job. None of that equates to purpose. And I think we put a lot of stock into those things, and then we become miserable because it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough.
I'm grateful for your transparency. Like I said, I am one, Pastor McGhee, that was not aware, of your journey until you shared it with me the first time we had a discussion. And the power of that transparency is the fact that, like you said, somebody can know you in the now. They know who Darrick McGhee is now, right? All that you personify, and you have a great name in this community. But to hear your story and talk about where you were, that's powerful, right? Because somebody could know if they are struggling. That's not the end of the story, right?
Yes, sir.
That doesn't have to be the end of the story.
Absolutely.
And some of what you spoke about as Black men is, the complexities, the nuance, right? You talk about Esau and the begging for the blessing, right? I mean, men in general, but definitely Black men, the complexity in the sense of making decisions, right? I mean, I talk all the time about, I'm one of 4 boys, as you know, Darrick, and if my parents taught us a lot, right? But if we, if they raised us up and taught us about respect and treating women right and watching over each other and being respectful to our elders and our community and building communities and things of that nature, maybe we didn't learn about etiquette. Maybe we didn't learn about all these like soft skills, right? Because there was a choice. And at the same time, again, the further you go back, you talk about dads and granddads and great granddads, there's survival in there, right? And unfortunately, again, I have 3 boys, some of the same skill sets of survival and navigation. And my father taught his boys, I have been teaching my boys, which is unfortunate, but also a reality, in this world. But if you have to choose between, what somebody might need or feel like they need emotionally in survival, in the sense of some hard skills for survival. A lot of our elders have taught survival because we needed you to survive, right?
Correct.
There are some complexities, and rightfully so. So what we have to learn, with more access to information, more education, more awareness, more lived experiences, is how to find that balance. And Takuma knows we talk about balance all the time, right? I mean, at the core of Black Men's Health is we're talking about balance, right? So, you know, can you be that protector? Can you be that provider, but also a protector and a provider in a sense of, you know, some things that are not so hard, some things that are soft, because, you know, our children and our loved ones need that.
Yeah, correct. And you know, man, it's what I am grateful for is at critical moments in my life, I can think about certain men who played major roles at those points in my life. Right, whenever there were major forks in the road, where there were men who helped out in a major way, and there's a friction that can take place amongst men. But I don't care where you are in the country. There's a universal language amongst Black men that I don't have to know you by name, but when I see you, there's some level of communication, whether it's a head nod, whether it's a fist bump, whatever, you know, it links us together, right? I think about when I go to the barbershop, for example. You know, we don't go in there with our titles. We go in there, we could be in the barbershop for 4 hours, just fellowship, having a good time, because there is still some level of need. We need each other. Talk about balance, John. That is my daily work, is to try to find balance and be balanced. You know, I love doing a lot of things, but sometimes busy work becomes distracting work, right? It doesn't mean that you're being effective or being impactful because you keep your calendar busy in that regard. But I feel like I have an obligation to Black men, especially younger Black men, that our life purpose is way bigger than acquiring the latest, right? It's much bigger than that. My son, again, plays football. He's a pretty good athlete, but I talk to my son less about sports and more about academics and more about life, because I understand that athletics has a expiration date. And if your whole purpose is built around that, then you're going to be in trouble when that comes to an end. My job, I told my son, so listen, our job isn't to make you the best football player. It's not what our job is. If that becomes it, great. We have a greater responsibility for you and your sister than that. And that's what my commitment is in that regard. And I think that's important for us as men. Lastly, I'll say, man, the family dynamic is destroyed, or definitely is bruised greatly, when the man is taken out of the equation, right? When that man either is absent intentionally or through life circumstances, he's been eliminated from that equation, that family dynamic struggles. I always say this to the men I deal with. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I say, listen, if I succeed as her father, then she won't settle for a knucklehead boy in her future. If I fail as her father, she'll go looking for love in all the wrong places. And so I'm raising a son and a daughter with my wife, and both of them need their parents. The need may be different, but it's still important. And I think that's the same thing with us as men, right? Is we need each other more than we realize. We are created to be in community with each other. No one's going to be successful doing anything by themselves. We need to be amongst each other. And I think that's so critical. That's something I was taught growing up, man, is having a lot of cousins is needing that, right? And it's helped me along the way in a major way. Takuma, I took over your interview, man.
You got it, bro.
Hey,
you got it. We're here to hear from you. We're here to hear from you.
Yes, we want your knowledge, and this has just been so valuable. And you know, you were talking about, like, you know, helping young men, and I keep thinking about the man you described earlier, who may be successful at their
Yeah.
job, who may, by outside appearances appear to be doing well.
Yeah.
But what do you say to that man who, may be quietly struggling with his self-esteem, with his feelings as a man, maybe struggling with his purpose,
Mm-hmm.
who may not feel like they are appropriate to head their family or to be fully involved in their family's lives? Because there's the counter argument to what you're saying. If you have a dysfunctional person who's in the family, isn't it addition by subtraction when you remove them from that equation? So what advice would you have for a man who's struggling with those internal struggles of fatherhood, of personhood, and interacting with their family?
So the first thing I would say, and I would say this from my own place of transparency. Number one is, do not make your family pay the price because you're unwilling to face it, whatever it is, right? My thing I say to the men in my church all the time, I say this to people all the time, is anything you suppress will eventually become volcanic. You can keep pushing something down, eventually it's going to erupt. The problem with the eruption is you don't know when it's going to happen, right? There are times when you can snap on your wife, but you're really mad at your boss or an employee, but you had an eruption and it just came because you've been suppressing for so long. For that man who's listening, don't make your family, your wife, your children pay the price because you've been trying to convince yourself, I got it under control. I got it. Also, I would say to the brother who feeling dysfunction, first of all, we all have some level of dysfunction in us. And so I want that brother to understand that you're not the only one who's dealing with that level of dysfunction, right? No matter how headstrong your wife is and desires to be, there's going to be a point where life is going to hit your household, and she's going to look at you and say, okay, what are we going to do about this, right? And so, brother, you are needed. You are necessary. You are important. I recall an episode of The Cosby Show, one of my favorite shows, where Dr. Huxtable was talking to one of his male, the husband of one of his female patients, and he was an older guy, and they were getting ready to have a baby, and he was having a hard time accepting that. He was trying to learn how to play basketball in the backyard, how to even shoot the ball. This was when they had Olivia on the episode. He shot the ball, hit the backboard, and she went ballistic, all excited about it. And Cliff was trying to say to him, don't you realize that at the end of the day, whatever you do, your child's going to be impressed by it, right? You're trying to become this perfection, and your child happy that you're just home, right? When I would come home from a busy day at the Capitol, for example, and I'm coming to the house, my kids would rush me at the door because I was home. They didn't care about what I did. They didn't care about who I knew. They were happy to see me. And so to that man, I would tell you, man, number one, don't make your family pay the price because you're too proud to admit that you have an area of struggle, right? I think that's important because somebody's going to have to pay the price, and make sure that it's not your children, because you can create. The Bible says, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, right? We can make it. We can be so broken until we become comfortable with being broken. But somebody has to pay the price for you remaining broken. First thing. Second thing I would say to the brother is you need covenant brothers. You need a covenant brother or brothers that you can go to and be honest, be transparent, be vulnerable with, where you guys are helping build each other up. Because if not, then you're doing it by yourself. And again, somebody has to pay the price for that in return. Now, we don't trust easy. I get that. At the same point, you need that outlet. Trust me, you need it, and your family needs it. The other thing I'll say to that brother is, you are greater than and more important than the position you hold or the title you have. A lot of times we as men, we put our importance in what we do versus who we are, because if you meet a brother right now and say, man, how you doing? I'm Darrick. The first thing I may ask that brother, because we kind of trained, is what do you do for a living? Right? Because that becomes the conversation. And so now, based on what you do for a living, you may or may not feel as if you are really worth anything. Some of the greatest conversations I've ever had before in my life were not from dudes who were holding C-suite positions, right? There's just that there wasn't those people. And so I think for the brother who is struggling, hear me, you're in good company. You're not the only one who is struggling in that regard. But brother, you have to be honest with yourself about what you're struggling with, about what's going on, about those challenges. We all at some point have a moment of a period of fear over something, right? And so you have to be honest about that. And then for those of us who are married, here's the important thing about that. The woman you're married to, God has ordained that marriage. I think that God has equipped your wife to be a helper of you in that marriage, right? She didn't marry you to be perfect. She knew you weren't perfect when she married you. And so she's not asking you to be perfect, right? She's also not asking you to box her out. She's there to help you. And she can't be at her great when you keep keeping her out of it. The scripture says, when Paul prayed the Lord, remove this thorn from the side of me, he prayed 3 times. The Lord said no. Then God said, but my grace is sufficient for you. Here's a key part of that verse. For my strength is made perfect in your weakness. The challenge for us is that most of us have been raised opposite of that verse of scripture. What do I mean by that? A lot of us have been raised where we got to be strong always. What Christ says in that verse is that my strength, meaning his strength, is made perfect in our weakness. So when I admit, Lord, I'm weak in this area, I can see him strong in that area. The problem is I never want to admit where I'm weak at. And so I keep the Lord out from being who he can be in that area. And that's also what happened with me in general is I can't tell John, man, I'm struggling in this marital issue or in this financial issue, because I can't afford to let John look down upon me. So I'm going to always act like everything is great, because I need to always make John feel like I'm always walking on the water. And so now I'm putting so much energy in trying to play a role and occupy a place, but I'm also broken on the inside. And so now, because my image to John is more important than being honest with John, I'm now trying to play a role so that John will always see me great and always speak well of me. But every man has or will at a point deal with a broken season of their life. Some is longer than others. And this is why, to me, black men's health has always been important. Even when John shared the initial vision, is because a lot of black men, we suffer from treatable health conditions. We're just too proud to deal with it. And so it's a domino effect, man. It's a domino effect. When that brother, something happened to that brother, it's a domino effect of what it does to that family. I am going to always be unapologetically a advocate for family. Always going to be that person. I believe of the strength of family. Strong family makes strong communities and strong churches and so on and so forth. And I'm blessed where I pastor, man, where I have a lot of men in my church. And I try to keep those brothers actively engaged in conversation. It is not easy, right? Being a man in today's world, it's not being easy, especially being a black man. It's not easy at all. But we can't buckle under the pressure, because the next generation needs us.
That's right.
They need us to help them. We got to be that bridge that helps them get over. And I think that's very, very important. Man, I'm 44 years old, and I still recall being 5 and 6 years old, things with my grandfather, right? It still matters to me today because of the role he played. And to me, that's so critical. That's so important. But to that brother who's listening, who is suffering in silence, brother, you don't have to. You don't have to. You're not the first one dealing with that. Won't be the last person to deal with that. This is a season of your life, and I can't say it's gonna get better tomorrow. I'm not gonna lie like that. But at the same point, I will tell you that if you are open to it, God will surround you by real, genuine men who will come undergird you and walk with you through this season of your life, because we need each other. We've lost too many of us. A lot of us have gone AWOL. A lot of us have just walked away from the responsibility because of the pressure. We need each other in a major way.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But can I say one more thing before we close off? This is in my spirit. I'm sorry to say
Please.
I want to speak to the young brother who is growing up without a father. I feel compelled to say this. The young brother who is striving to be the first fruit. They're trying to end that generational curse, and you are trying to do everything you can physically do to overcome what seems to be setbacks. It's possible, brother. It's possible. What I want to say there, brother, it's possible. There may not be a blueprint that you can follow the way you want it to, but it's possible. And to the brothers out there, man, who, like myself, when you've had to overcome some major things in life, we have an obligation to reach back, grab hold, and pull forward. When I do leadership development classes, I talk about the push-pull effect, right? I'm a believer of mentor-mentee relationship, but the push-pull. I believe as somebody has pushed you, you ought to be pulling somebody, right? We can't make it about us alone. Many people in my life have poured into my life. Shame on me if I receive of their pouring and I don't in turn give an outpour to somebody else. And so I'm saying that to the brother who's watching, and you're saying, man, you have no idea, what I've gone through. I don't. My story is even deeper than what I've shared on here. But what I will tell you is there is a grace that God will bestow upon you to equip you and enable you to not only overcome that, but then position you better. Because who's better to go talk to that brother who's going through something than a brother who came out of what he's currently going through? And that's my charge to us as Black men, is that we think beyond ourselves and think about our other brothers, because we know that we all win together. But if that brother buckles under the pressure and he folds, it's a domino effect of impact to a lot of people, especially those children. And they'll be now starting out steps behind everyone else with a lot of pent up anger and bitterness and frustration, because they felt like they never got dealt a good hand or a fair hand. And I think it's important for us as men to step up. I'll close this way, and I really am closing this way. Dr. Martin Luther King, in one of his great speeches, he says these words. He said, whenever a man straightens his back out, he's going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. And that's my charge to us, is when we straighten our backs up, we hold our heads up high, and we walk upright as men, guess what happens? We can help so many more people because of how we walk upright. I'm on the shoulders of giants who came before me and made it possible. I have an obligation to their sacrifice to pull others along the way. And so I charge all of us, including myself, man, that we have a responsibility to each other. And this is bigger than title, position, things of that nature. This is about Black men being concerned about other Black men, so that we all as Black men can be made whole together. And brothers, I appreciate y'all letting me get that out of my spirit.
Man, we appreciate you, brother. Hey, I want to circle back to one thing you said earlier. You said sometimes you look up, you might be the only black man in the room or Black person in the room. You might mean in the building or in the vicinity. In the vicinity.
Correct.
I don't want to minimize that. You could be the only Black person in the block. That's for sure.
But make your impact, brothers. Make your impact.
Right.
If that is you, instead of whining about that, instead of venting about that, be the trendsetter. Take that moment seriously, because if you handle it properly, you could then become the first of many that come after you if you handle it right. So see it, observe it, recognize it, and strategize how you're gonna make sure you're not the last one that comes through that door.
Brother McGhee, we appreciate your time and attention, brother. It's always
Honored.
good. It's
Honored.
always good. Yeah, that's right.
Very honored to both of you.
Mic
Takuma,
drop.
you see why I referenced that it would be so enriching, and obviously there's so many different
Absolutely.
directions we can go in. So we'll have to have Brother McGhee back for future discussions, and I look forward. I'll claim this now. I look forward to putting him in person. We got to sit him down on a stage in front of
Absolutely.
some men in real life as soon as possible. So
I would love that.
I'll name and proclaim that now, man. So
Amen, brother.
we're grateful for
Right.
you, brother. Thank you for
Honored.
spending time with us, and
Honored.
love to the family. Okay.
Thank you both, man. Thank you both, brother. Appreciate you guys.
Right.
Appreciate you. Respect.
Yes, sir.